TG Geeks, episode 131, August 21st, 2017. Bats, bombs, and boobs. Can I say that? Hello and welcome to another webcast from tggeeks.com, where Ben and Keith, the Two Gay Geeks, talk about all aspects of geekdom and nerdery. Sci-fi, comics, film, horror, genre, you name it, we talk about it. I'm Keith Lane, and we're coming to you from TG Squared Studios in lovely Phoenix, Arizona, but we're not in Phoenix, we're probably in Alaska by now.
And I'm Ben Raggington, also coming to you from somewhere. Let me see, by now, we should be beginning to approach the Tracy Arm Fjord.
You never know.
Up in Alaska.
Yeah, as we've been putting together episodes to release while we are on vacation.
And
Yes.
it's cold.
And it's cold. And so this is going to be just another one of those truncated episodes where it's just
I would hardly call this one truncated.
This one's not truncated. This
not
one's,
by any stretch.
It's a little lengthy, but that's okay too, given the subject matter. So, and we'll catch up on the feedback when we return from our vacation with a Feedback-a-Palooza episode. And we're going to talk to somebody that's a rather celebrated comic book writer and
in his
editor.
own mind.
In his own mind.
He should be.
Seriously,
he should be.
So we're just going to get right to it. So here we go. And this time on the show, we have a really special treat for you. We have Mr. Brian Augustyn, longtime editor, writer at DC Comics. Welcome, Brian, to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Keith.
And
it's good to be here. Go ahead and let's talk comics.
Okay. And Ben's here as well.
Yeah, of course I'm here.
So we were really excited to have you on the show here because previously, 6 months or 8 months or some time ago, you had mentioned that you got a check from somebody and you thought it might be related to something that was going on, and then all of a sudden here, 2 or 3 weeks ago, it's announced that Gotham by Gaslight is going to be a new animated series.
Direct animated film.
Yeah, so I just thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know whether that was related or not, but it certainly seemed related.
Well, just to give some flesh to the bones of that story, the check was generic. It was just a thank you check, which is always nice, right? I mean, who doesn't want some cash from an outfit that has more than enough? And and it was a very nice surprise. It was not tied to a specific project. It was a thank you for all of your contributions. And then at the last minute, it said, especially Gotham by Gaslight, which continues to be so popular. By the way, all of which, that is true.
Right.
It's been 28 years since we issued that book the first time.
What? Has it been that long?
It is.
Wow.
It is.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, when we first started, Mike Mignot had hair and nothing was gray.
Yeah. Yeah. And so we bought a copy from you at Phoenix Comic Con or somewhere. I don't remember, one of the places, many places we've seen you. But then rather than crack the spine on that thing, we both bought digital copies. So we gave lots of money to DC. And
God
read
bless
it.
You.
Yeah, and I'm fond of saying, or not fond of saying, but I have said that I was never a comic book person growing up. And I'm finding, speaking to comic book, editors, writers, artists, that reading their work, I'm becoming more interested in comics, and the Gotham by Gaslight was just fascinating. I thought it was incredible.
I think also is that you're being introduced to maybe the idea of the graphic novel now,
right?
As opposed to a comic book. I mean, this is a real graphic novel. So 28 years. I didn't know it was around that long because first time I learned about Gotham by Gaslight was just some independent little film company. They were going to be doing a live action short on the whole Jack the Ripper thing with Batman. But let's go back.
They were doing, I think, a fan film or something.
Yeah. And not a bad one either. I saw some of it. It looked pretty good. The production qualities were fantastic. But for people who don't know what Gotham by Gaslight is, especially some of our up-and-coming audience.
Yeah, let's start with who is Brian Augustyn
Okay,
first,
let's do that then.
And then we'll talk about the Gotham by Gaslight. So for those that don't know,
hold out.
Yeah. So for those that don't know who Brian Augustyn is, introduce yourself and what you have done previously. Obviously, we mentioned that you were with DC Comics, so tell us about that.
Yeah, that's one facet. I've let's see, doing some math that I don't want to do. I've been in the comics business. Oh my God, 30 years.
Wow.
32 years, actually. 32 years. Man and boy, as Perry White would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I started out in independent comics back in '85.
Wow.
During the black and white boom that brought Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the world. We actually completely independent of what they were doing, since we issued about the same time. I edited and co-wrote a book called Troll Lords, which was a fantasy comedy, basically about 3 fantastic creatures who accidentally enter the modern world.
Wow.
3 trolls, and they were in the hands of the creators, basically the Three Stooges.
Oh dear.
But they dealt with matters of life and death, literally.
Right.
Because death in the form of a skeleton in a lounge singer's tuxedo was a regular character. And again, that all sounds humorous, but we did take it to the wire. We had very special episodes of Blossom, often enough that it wasn't just comedy, and it wasn't, but we had all of that. It was silly and slapsticky, and at the same time poignant, we hope, and dramatic, and it kind of opened the door for all of us involved. I was, I guess, solicited. No, that's not the right word. I was invited to sort of do some time at First Comics in Chicago, which is where I'm from, and I did very little. I went through their slush pile and wrote letters. That's about all I did.
Wow.
But then the guy who created First, a guy named Mike Gold, was hired to go to DC to start a development group, a new product, a new comic development group, and through a series of negotiations and accidents, etc., I wound up moving out east to New York and working as an associate editor and eventually a full editor, first with Mike and then in the sort of general DC Universe material. So I did a lot of stuff that I sort of generated. We did a revival of The Shadow called The Shadow Strikes, the pulp and radio character, and we kind of returned him to these 30s roots and or roots, depending on where you're from. And with a guy named Gerard Jones and Mike Parabek, we created a brand new character called El Diablo, who was sort of like a champion of the underprivileged in South Texas.
Wow.
He probably would be in trouble nowadays with immigration, with walls and stuff.
Right. And we won't go there.
And we did I had a lot of fun that way, but then I entered the universe, took over Flash as an editor. My favorite character from the very beginnings of my interest in comics back in the 60s. Love the Flash, still do. And was lucky enough to be involved with Flash for about 130 issues in one way or another. I was the editor for a while. Then I was a co-writer with Mark Waid, co-writer with Mark Waid. I don't know if you've ever heard of that guy.
Oh, yes.
Well, I when I got to DC, he and I were both associate editors, and we became fast pals because he was weird and I could put up with it, and
and he could put up with you.
Well, I'm you know me, I'm a fairly easygoing sort, and a little snarky, but Mark was also a small, kind of quintessential comic nerd, and I think he hovered near the taller guy for protection. I'm blowing that out of proportion, but maybe not much.
Hey, you're taller than me.
But I got to a place where I needed to replace the writer, and I had a lot of faith in Mark, and I hired him to take over the writing of the Flash. And between us and discovering the now unfortunately late Mike Wieringo for art, we took that book from middling sales to near top sales within about 40 issues.
Yeah, and you presided over the Flashpoint era of the Flash. Is that
Flashpoint? No, that was just after we left.
Oh, I thought that's what.
That was Jeff Johns, I think.
No, I thought you had said that. Oh well, maybe I'm.
No, we did a number of the big issues like Born to Run, the reorigin of Wally West as Flash. Well, we had a lot of big stuff that's been collected in trade paperbacks, but Flashpoint was after Jeff Johns took over.
You were in charge of Flash during that whole Crisis on Infinite Earths period then, were you?
No, the later Crisis on Infinite Earths was just about the time I was packing to move to DC.
Ah, okay.
In the late 80s. So you figure my run on Flash was
in between those 2 points.
96, 89 to 96.
In between the Crisis and Flashpoint, so yeah.
Sometime between that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well that is really cool. And then you did some other writing, and you wound up and you did the Gotham by Gaslight. So what was the impetus for creating that?
Well, it's another one of these conspiracies with Mark Waid.
Uh-oh.
I lived in Connecticut when I was out east, and he lived in New Jersey, and our commutes were about the same length. And Mark was, while he was still an editor before he had written, he was in charge of a book called Secret Origins.
Mm-hmm.
And this is about 1988. And he had come into my space, my office just before we left the office to say, "Cool, great news, good news, bad news." I said, "What's the good news?" He said, "I've been given a Secret Origins annual." And I said, "Well, that is very good news. Good for you." I said, "What's the bad news?" He goes, "We've done the Secret Origin of every character at DC." He said, my problem now is that, I'm going to spend an annual telling the origins of the human bomb or whatever. And there is such a character. And he exploded.
Right.
Oh,
he
really?
Would get excited and he would get excited and he would explode. Yeah, that's the kind of laughs we had in the office. What can I say? So Mark goes home. I said, "We'll talk in the morning." And again, we're inseparable at this point. We were two straight guys, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Tall and short.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Anyway,
we're two gay guys, tall and short.
As soon as I walk in the door. What's that?
I said, we're two gay guys, tall and short.
That's what I'm saying. We were all but for that part, that one essential element. We were you guys. Anyway, he calls me the minute I almost walk in the door, and he said, "I've come up with a solution. I don't know if he'll go for it, but my solution is, let us do apocryphal annual origins. Mm-hmm. Like retell the origin in some different way."
Mm.
And he was having trouble crystallizing what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. But I understood that he was talking alternate history.
Right.
Which is kind of an interesting conceit if you think about it. It's
Yeah.
It's not history, it's fiction.
Right.
But I finally said, listening to him, I said, wait, let me see if I'm anywhere near what you're talking about. So I said, just off the top of my head, Batman in the Victorian era, and he's fighting, Jack the Ripper. And I wish it were more complicated than that.
Well, dang.
It literally was that. And he goes, okay. And we batted it back and forth on the phone for a while. And he goes, let's talk about this in the morning. So as soon as I was done talking to him, I sat down and I typed up a 2-page précis to make it clear what we were talking about.
Right.
Like a little mini proposal. So I walked in and he goes, let's talk about the thing. I said, here, try this on first. So what I'm saying is we got so excited, we kept rolling.
Right.
Knowing full well that someone could easily and probably would say, stop.
Yeah.
Dick Giordano was the editor-in-chief and my hero, one of my very favorite people on the planet and one of the best leaders of creative people that I've ever met. He has unfortunately passed, but a great artist and a terrific editor and a wonderful boss. And he took this 2-page thing and he said, I'll read it. And we were expecting it that it'd be a day or 3. I think it was an hour, and he came and found us, and he said, come into my office.
Oh, my.
Uh-oh.
And he said, I like this very much, but I think you're wasting it if you put it in an annual.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we've got this, whatever they were calling the square-bound comics at the time, or graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
New format, no, not new format, but prestige, that's it, prestige format. He goes, we've got this prestige format thing now. This would be a great standalone if you can get, like, whoever. You need some clout on the art. So find me a great artist. I will make sure this becomes a prestige format graphic novel.
Wow. Well,
So we walk out of Dick's office, a few inches off the ground at least, and who should be walking in to deliver the last of his pages for Cosmic Odyssey but Mike Mignola.
Wow.
And we said, Mike, could we talk to you? And he goes, I'm going over to Marvel. I've agreed to do a Wolverine project for them. I have no time for anything else. And we said, just listen to the pitch. So we walked him into my office. We closed the door, and then we took turns, kind of rope-a-doping the guy, pitching the story in sort of in a sequential way.
Right.
So we start blah blah blah, and then da da da, and about halfway through our pitch, Mike was finishing sentences.
Oh my!
That's good.
He was going, no, better. We'll put it over here, or wait, it's on a horse. So he was participating.
Wow.
And when we finished the pitch, he looked at us horrified. His face ash and his eyes as big as dinner plates. And he said, and since this is PG, I will clean it up. But he said, oh shoot, I'm doing this book, aren't I? So we snuck up on him.
Wow.
And I think it's probably one of the fastest things to ever come together. We literally dragged Mike into Dick Giordano's office. We said, Mike will do it. What do you think? And Dick said, perfect.
Wow.
And then I think it was Mike or Giordano who said, Craig Russell's looking for work. Maybe he could ink.
Oh my gosh.
And the rest is history.
Wow. That's amazing. Like you said, you wish it were a little more convoluted, but that was pretty straightforward. That's amazing.
And it was literally one lucky break after another, I have to say. I wrote the script in a fairly quick time. Mike and I went to lunch and went over the script, and he made some changes that I was perfectly fine with. They were, for visual. He had this thing hovering over him where he had to get onto another project, but he poured himself into this absolutely. And while he'd done a few of those sort of mid-level Cosmic Odyssey kind of stuff, he credits it to this day as that was his turning point. That was the project that kind of put him on the map one step, up towards the top.
Wow.
And we had two lucky things happen. They aimed it at Halloween because they thought, well, it's a Halloween project. And while we knew it was coming, when we were doing all the planning, we had no idea that the initial Michael Keaton Batman film was about to come out.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that puts it in context.
So that came out in August, I think, of '89, maybe July. And we came out at the end of September, early October of the same year. There had been just enough time for bat fever.
Yeah, exactly.
No kidding.
Wow.
To take over, because that film was an enormous success, deservedly, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I had friends who ran a comic shop who said we can't keep that product in the house.
Wow.
And that includes junky back issues from 1986. Nothing other than just back issues of a comic.
Right.
But everything Batman sold, and we came out at a wonderful time. And our initial sales were well beyond anybody at DC's expectation.
Yeah.
And it put us all on the map, I have to say. It also bought me a Jeep Cherokee and eventually a down payment on a house. So
wow, that's incredible.
It did very well back in those days when the deals were. I mean, they're still probably fairly sweet, but ultimately, globally, I'm not going to mention dollar figures, but I will tell you that we have sold close to 100,000 copies.
Wow.
That's here and abroad.
Wow. I thought it was an incredible story, and I loved the art. I loved everything about it. It was just a great thing to behold, shall we say.
It's a very compelling story.
Yeah, and then there was the follow-up to that. What's the name of it?
I can't remember the follow-up story.
Oh, shoot.
Master of the Future.
Is it?
Yes, and that
I bought it. Yes, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. No. Now, what was the name of that thing?
No, that's not it.
No. Yeah, I bought the graphic or the.
Right. No, that's how it's in print now. Thank God.
Yeah, and the electronic version too. You can get the electronic version separately. But I bought the two together, and that story was a great story too.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that one too.
I thought that was a fun story, but it's the Jack the Ripper one that really stood out for me because
what a twist.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to give away any spoilers in case anybody hasn't read it, but you're talking about
Jack the Ripper's in it.
Well, yeah.
Oh yeah, how about that?
Oh really? I must have missed that part. But when you're talking about such an infamous character of history going up against arguably the greatest detective. I mean, in my opinion, I know people always refer to Sherlock Holmes or something like that.
Certainly, he's the greatest detective in comics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the context of our story, we know that he trained with Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
That's true. That's right. That's why he's coming back from England. Whoops.
And Sigmund Freud.
It's subtle.
Yeah.
And spent time with Freud. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and there what I was doing was that there have been stories, not recent, but there are Batman stories like in the 60s and mostly in the 60s that I remember, where you would learn that he had, as a young man, had traveled the globe.
Mm-hmm.
When they would retell the origin, even Batman Year One from Miller and Mazzucchelli, there is this idea that he's coming home to Gotham after like 6 or 7 years, and that he's gone to school and he's done training with individuals. They don't say who, but to my mind, we're in that. It was, it takes place in 100 years prior to its publication, so it takes place in 1889.
Right.
And Freud was working, and the Ripper had just finished in London, and so on. All I can say to go on about that is simply this: Batman. The reason it came to me was that the minute he started talking about different time periods, I've always had in my mind, without ever actively thinking of it as a story, that Batman is a Gothic character.
Yeah.
That, I mean, he is. I mean, right from the very beginning. And at the same time, that period of time, the Victorian era, the Gaslight era,
right.
It just struck me as that's the perfect setting for a Batman story. I mean, especially if you're looking for that sense of alternative, but to my mind, it's the perfect alternative.
Wow.
I mean, as they went on, we accidentally created what they called Elseworlds, and as they went on, they had him in the Civil War. They had him in the 1930s gangster era, which kind of worked very well. I don't know about Civil War. I don't know about a whole bunch of other stuff, and I'm not criticizing. It's just that, to me, the Gothic era of the late 1800s seemed to be a welcoming setting.
Right.
So once that became the target, then everything else just fell into place.
Yeah. So
who is he fighting? The greatest villain of that time.
Exactly. So there's other Elseworld stories. Did you do anything with any of those stories, or was that kind of put off to somebody else to do the Elseworlds after you stumbled onto
what
it?
What happened? Yeah, I mean, we dabbled here and there. I have to say that what happened was, the minute there literally was some sort of Satori moment where creators were saying, "Wait, we can do this."
Yeah,
and
that opens up a lot of doors.
and the office, Mark Waid was the editor of the first one, and then he went off to various degrees of leaving to become a freelancer and not getting along at DC, which doesn't need to get history. By the time the second book was done, which they had asked me to do, Denny O'Neil was my editor, which my hero, one of my writing heroes, and that was very intimidating, and at the same time incredibly satisfying to have Denny say, "Hey, this is good." So,
right.
I mean, not only does he know better than the rest of us how to write a story, he was sort of notably kind but moderately taciturn. He was not the most conversational human being on the planet. He was too busy thinking deep thoughts and coming up with great stories. So to collaborate with him was terrific. And I guess just prior to that, the office started getting flooded with all kinds of things that Denny looked around and said, and this is, well, we were still working on the sequel. He looked around and said, if we're going to do this, this should be an imprint.
Right.
To give it an imprint would be to set it, to sort of announce up front, everything over here is out of continuity.
Right.
Right.
And especially in the late 80s, continuity was a big issue.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people were getting really fussy about how come this storyline doesn't match up with what's going on here. I mean, readers became, they became a little bit, I hate to use this term, but it's accurate, anal retentive, and unfortunately I'm one of them. When it comes to the continuity.
I think they were empowered. And
right.
That's a new one.
And you mentioned Crisis on Infinite Earth in 86 or whatever it was.
Yeah, around 86.
That's the floodgate that allowed the continuity retentive to literally go out of their minds. So there was a little pushback on the idea of our book. It's not continuity. Well,
right.
We figured that out too.
Yeah, we understand that. People move on.
We had the book mostly done in August of that year when we all went to San Diego. And I sat on the Coming Attractions DC panel. And whoever was doing the announcing said, Brian here is writing a book, Gotham by Gaslight. It's about this. It's set in the Victorian time. It's Batman versus Jack the Ripper, not just versus the guy, but solving the mystery of Jack the Ripper, blah, blah, blah. And somebody raised their hand and said, I have a question for Brian. And the question was, is this an imaginary story? Which was what DC used to do all the time, was when they would have Superman's children or whatever.
Right.
In the early to middle 60s, they would call it an imaginary story.
I mean, it's nothing new.
Well, no, but that's not exactly what we were thinking. Because it was in our case, the character is exactly the same. But how does the story change in different settings, which is ultimately, I think, the defining issue of an Elseworlds is you affirm the essential nature of the hero, but tell an interesting story, and the story itself is what depends on the setting, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Batman was still Batman.
Oh, absolutely.
But the the milieu, to use a pretentious French word, was what told that particular, like I said before, once you're in that period, who should he fight? Well, who should he know? Well, Sherlock Holmes, etc. And so this fellow, this lovely young man from the audience, is this an imaginary story? And I took the microphone in my hand and I looked out and, sort of made it look as though I was about to speak, and then stopped and looked like I was searching for an answer. And then I said, sir, all comic book stories are imaginary.
Snap!
And we warned you up front, folks. This man is a little snarky.
Well, I kind of have the whole William Shatner bit for Saturday Night Live. Get a life, people.
Yeah.
Except that I did it very kindly. Well, as much as I do. I was younger, so I might even have been more kind. It floored, literally, among the bigger laughs. Maybe the biggest laugh I've ever gotten for a single line. And I live for the laughs. And I think that ended the conversation because it was then reported.
Oh dear!
Back in the pre-Bleeding Cool days, it was Augustyn asked if it was an imaginary story. Augustyn affirmed that all comic book stories are imaginary. Go away, you geek. I actually did not say that.
No, but there is sort of an implication.
I was beaming it into his brain.
There's an implication there, I think.
Yeah. Sir, didn't you realize?
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of wonderful things happened. Like I say, Mike went on to do a Wolverine project that was drawn by Mike Mignola, artist of Gotham by Gaslight. I got to write a whole lot more stuff. I was being invited to write things. Another of my writing heroes, Archie Goodwin, became an editor during that time, and
all these names I remember.
Me to write a miniseries with him, and I did, and it was a lovely thing. And most importantly, Mike and his wife Christine, and myself and my wife Nadine, all four of us got to go to Hawaii to promote the book.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
And we were in Hawaii for 10 days.
Wow.
And we did, maybe 3 or 4 store appearances, and the rest of that time was ours.
Wow, that's incredible. So it must have been
all those years later when we got that check. It was kind of like, hey, you know what? That's gravy.
Exactly.
It's already been a career and at least one trip,
exactly.
And probably more.
So you not only write and edit, but you also draw as well, correct?
I doodle. I'm not sure what you're referencing.
Well, I know that
go ahead.
You participate in the at various cons in the what is it, draw-a-thon or whatever it is that they do occasionally.
Sketch off?
Yes, there you go.
No, well, to be clear, I'm largely, I am the MC of that program, of those programs.
I see.
So I do not indulge, although I went to art school.
Ah, okay.
I can crudely cartoon, but I did not, while at art school, discover the ability to be the next Kurt Swan or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff you have to learn, like perspective and things like that.
Perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, you have to draw somebody, flying over a building. So.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, make it look sort of acceptable as a piece of art. So, in terms of writing, be it a comic book or a graphic novel, what's the actual format in which you write? I'm having a very difficult time trying to formulate this question, but I've always been kind of fascinated with what follows form. So when you're writing out, do you write it out like a script? Do you write it out like a novel? Do you collaborate with your artist at the same time? How does that process work?
I will say generally, it is done alone. I mean, yes, I more often than not, I'll have a long conversation with the editor and very often with the artist, but that's not a guarantee. I've worked with a lot of folks, a lot of artists who are not in the United States, artists from Brazil and the Philippines and other places. And what I write almost always is what I call a full script, and it's panel by panel with art direction for each panel. Mm-hmm. And then below that is the dialogue for each character in that panel. As needed.
Okay.
So it looks a little like a movie script if you've ever seen one.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
In that they have a block of text explaining the scene, but in our case, with the illusion of motion and movement in time, the panels sort of need to convey what a motion picture scene would do simply by following the characters. So each panel is a click in time, and so I like to, as many writers do, Wade is the same, and a lot of other writers I've worked with, I like to pace out the story by going panel by panel. A lot of artists have chosen to ask, can I combine those two panels to make a bigger image? Sure. Or no.
Right.
No, not crudely. I mean, with a reason. I mean,
right, exactly.
I want that extra beat for time.
Right.
And there are a lot of tropes and tricks of writing to, like I say, we're writing static images or drawing static images and writing words in a bubble. So when you can give the illusion of motion and time passing, that's pretty good. And pacing is how you make it compelling, how you make it suspenseful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever noticed guys like Miller or George Perez, they'll do 3 silent panels, sometimes one smaller or narrower than the previous. What they're doing there is they're counting down the seconds. Maybe each of those panels is a character standing absolutely still and saying nothing, and each of those panels representing that same image of the character just standing still.
That's wow.
In a film or in life, that would be someone standing and taking their time and answering a question.
It's reactionary time.
Wow.
I never thought about that, but it's true.
It gives the reader that pause. Stop and think. Don't rush into the fight scene.
Right.
I like it.
So between the artist and the writer, we want to control the movement, the passage of time, and the pace of the story, how quickly it, because let's be honest, a comic book is one trip to the bathroom for most people.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's really great stuff out there where, graphic novel, even single issues of a monthly comic book that, for the longest time, everything that Frank Miller did, Daredevil and his Batman stuff, I was almost a grown-up and just about working in comics, but it's never too late to learn something. And there's a lot of people who've come since, or a lot of influences from one place or another, that I like to think that even as an ancient fogey, also America's Sweetheart, but even as an ancient fogey, I'm still learning.
Hey, wait a minute. You're kind of including us in that ancient fogey thing. You're not that much older than us.
I don't believe. No. I refer to myself only. I was only talking about myself. Honest to God, I was. I mean, you guys are old, but
oh, there it is. There it is.
I knew I could coax it out of you.
You just have to give me room to set it up.
Yeah, of course. He's thinking like a writer.
Anyway,
I was controlling the passage of time.
Yes, you were.
Yeah. So
and now we're back. So let's talk a little.
That led to a lot of great writing. When we're in person, I will be glad to show you how my scripts look.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see that. Yeah.
Or I can email you a file. In fact, I have to start writing one tomorrow. So.
Oh wow! So you're still working? You're not completely retired, right?
I will. Yes, as my wife likes to remind me, I will never be able to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So
the freelance life is ebbs and flows.
Right.
So what kind of projects do you do in terms of freelance?
Well, I've got. I pick up assignments as they come. More often than not, I'm still lucky enough to get phone calls. I did a handful of one-shots for DC in the last couple of years, specials and annuals, things like that.
Anything that anybody might know?
I did a handful of Flash specials, say in the last 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I did. I don't remember if they called them. They did a handful of one-shots right around the time just before the New 52. So this is 5 years ago. That told the character at different points in recent time. So I did like the 90s Flash, and somebody else did the 80s Flash, and like that. And then I did a one-shot special, shortly after that. But mostly I've stayed busy with both editorial and writing for a couple of independent outfits. I'm still editing for an outfit called Visionary. We do a lot of what I would call commercial comics, which is sort of somewhere between advertising and vanity sounds wrong, but I mean it's folks who have a story that they want to tell, are willing to hire it done, and I've scripted some and edited several more. And as an example, for a local color here in Arizona, I picked up an assignment from ASU.
Oh, far out.
From their science and culture group in the School of Science, and they wanted to do a comic that they will give away to high school students.
Oh, fascinating! And
so we're in the process right now of creating a comic for ASU Science Department on the near future of Arizona and resource, like sustainability. And that sounds like, certainly the meat of a very exciting comic, right? But we live in such a interesting ecological place, and So what they asked, I did not write it. I'm just the editor and I'm project manager. But what they wanted us to do was to imagine the bright future, not a negative future.
Oh, I like that.
So, but it will be, there will be an adventure with characters, mostly young people, as you know, I guess mostly high school students, I would say, as the heroes. A couple of folks, a couple of adults, and you know, we're looking at, you know, much of it is set in this future solar power plant, and at the same time, there's an adventure. There are chase scenes and explosions and, you know, all the stuff that they'll let us do without being sensationalistic.
The human bomb makes its appearance.
Right.
Go ahead. What was that?
The human bomb makes his appearance.
I don't know about that.
Is there any way that will be?
As I once said, if you name a comic book The Human Bomb, you're only asking for it.
That's true. Yeah. Regarding
like any movie that's called, you know, something like, you know, I'm sure it's happened. Things like the last movie.
Right.
Yeah. The bad reviews too.
I know.
This should be the last movie.
Yeah, I hate titles like that.
Yeah.
So I think we should be more positive. Anyway, this is a commercial project for ASU, and this fall should be going out to high school students. I don't have all the information about how they plan to distribute it, but that's the sort of thing I've been doing lately. But I'm also taking on mainstream work. I'm writing an arc of Lady Mechanica.
Fascinating.
Okay,
which is a very popular indie comic. And it's interesting how Gotham by Gaslight is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to have one of those.
Joe Benitez, who is the creator of the book, the artist and writer.
Mm-hmm.
I was approached by him at a Comic-Con last fall, I think. And he said, "You know what just dawned on me?" He said, "My book is a steampunk book set in the Victorian times."
Mm-hmm.
I went, "Uh-huh." "And you wrote Gotham by Gaslight." I went, "Uh-huh." And I said, "Which, by the way, is not steampunk."
Right. No, it's
and he
not.
Goes, "No, but you write that period." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How about writing a guest arc for me?" And I said, "Sure." I like the book. I think he's a good guy, a friend of mine. But in all that time we knew each other, it took a while for it to sink in. It didn't sink in on me until he said it, and I went, "Of course."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
The light bulb was, all of our light bulbs were lit up.
Yeah.
Far out.
It sounds dirty, but
well, it's not.
Well, to me, everything is.
It's shedding the light. It's shedding light on things.
There you go.
Yes.
So that's my next project, and thank God for the immediate future. I have things lined up. It's, you know, in the cartoons when Sylvester is chasing Tweety,
Mm-hmm.
and they go out a window, and Tweety steps seemingly into midair, and a girder swings in just in time for him to land.
Right.
And then Sylvester, emboldened by this, steps out, and there is no girder for him.
Right.
My creative life has been very much Tweety and the girders. There have been very much there have been highs, and very much there have been lows. A lot of it has nothing to do with comics. I mean, I have some mild disability issues after an accident. That's definitely a low. But in terms of comics, for my sins, when I need an assignment, I'm lucky and I find one.
Yeah.
And after 33 years or whatever I said, 32 years, it is, it's gratifying and at the same time humbling that I can't say for a moment that I'm unhappy that people remember me. And as my wife will say, and you pretend to be humble.
There you go.
And I do. I'll admit that. But at the same time, if people don't remember me, you know, I don't have my ego tied to that.
Right.
I don't know that it's an essential that people remember me, but I'm glad when they do.
Yeah, well,
that sounds very corny, but
no,
I know. Well, at least they're gonna remember your work.
Yeah.
I mean, you've left a marvelous legacy already,
and we really enjoy talking to you.
I'd like to be dead before there's a legacy being counted, but yes, I have been lucky that I had at least 2 or 3 things that, you know, Gaslight, a long run on Flash, and also you know, a lot of the stuff that I edited that. Were fairly good runs on famous. I mean, I've been lucky. I worked on.
Right.
I was an editor on several of the Justice League books. My second favorite character, I would never have admitted when I was in grammar school, was Wonder Woman. And
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with Wonder Woman.
No, not at all. But I would buy a stack of 12 or 15-cent comics. And that one would usually get tucked in the middle in case I ran into a pal.
Right. It's for my sister, I swear.
Sadly, if they read the book, it really was Superman with boobs, because the people who were doing it at the time, I don't think were going out of their way to write, Wonder Woman as well as is now the case with Perez and all of the folks who followed. But the character's always been a favorite, and I got to edit it for about 2 years.
Wow!
And worked with Bill Loebs, whose name is prominent in the film's thank you credits, and Brian Bolland, who did all of my covers, and gorgeous British art and a British artist, and I'm very proud of our run, because we again, early to middle 90s, I guess it was, we approached it. I'm not going to say feminist, but our Wonder Woman, like most Wonder Woman since, was a champion of the unrepresented women and children.
Yeah.
And we got to, thanks to what we were the just previous version of the character, we got to write her as returning to humanity. And so we treated her as a superior but loving character,
right?
Who was always willing to learn what was going on. And while she might have been amused by some of the folly of it, she never would put anybody down.
Right.
And I saw an awful lot of that character in the film, and I take no credit for it, because it did become and has become sort of the baseline of that character's integrity.
Yeah.
And we were just part of that. But, I mean, that's another one of those things I'm proud to have been part of.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And no, my name was not in the credits, but Bill's was, and that's important.
Yeah.
Well, I hate to end this, but wow, this has been one heck of a conversation. So, for anybody who is out listening to this, do you have a presence on the internet or any kind of social media presence where people can follow you or your work?
Sure, I'm on Twitter at Brian Augustyn, and you can find me on Facebook. I don't think I social media beyond that.
Well, those are pretty big right there.
But I'm certainly reachable there, and I will track the ups and downs, and very often there are reasons to talk about previous projects as well. Some art will turn up or something, and so Facebook is a good place to find me, and Twitter I can be found as well.
Fantastic.
Oh, and I also have my own podcast.
Yes.
Tell people about that.
Yeah.
It is called Sort of a Big Show. It has been various and sundry people and I having conversation about mostly pop culture, some comics, movies, etc. We do it once a week. It's an hour long, and currently it is findable on SoundCloud, and we're working on iTunes. currently it's myself and a guy, a fellow friend of mine named Gary St. Lawrence, and we have a lot of fun. We give news and complain about continuity.
Yeah.
And yesterday, talking about the milkshake crisis. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes, I saw that.
Okay, this one got by me.
Yes. A Marvel...
A group of... there was a young lady, there was a woman named Flo Steinberg who, back in 1961, was Stan Lee's secretary. And because Stan gave credit to everybody around, she was often mentioned in the books, in the the fan page. She often got a credit for assistant editor, things like that. And then she went on to run, a whole bunch of stuff at Marvel. She was a major pioneer. Well, she passed away last week, I think, and at like 78 or something. And the current women editors and associate editors went to, I think, Serendipity in Manhattan, the great retro ice cream parlor. And I could be wrong, but anyway, they went to a cool place for milkshakes because Flo apparently was a big fan, and they posed for a selfie with their milkshakes, basically saluting Flo. And of course, within moments, the trolls came out of their mom's basement and just went after them in the worst possible meanest,
good grief.
fake fan, all the little boys who don't want to share their comics.
Yeah. It was Gamergate all over again.
It was very much like that, yes, and it's been repeated in comics and science fiction. I mean, I don't even know what to ascribe it. It's just, those people who are anal about continuity apparently are anal about not letting the girls in the clubhouse. He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Oh.
I raised daughters. I hate this.
Yeah.
With a white hot passion. So when we were talking about it, my PG show became a little less PG.
I see. Okay.
There is a repeated use of a word that starts with A and a second word that starts with H. As I was characterizing these annoying little twits.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff we get into. Wow. And then Gary and I got milkshakes imposed, and
yeah, I saw that picture. That was a good picture.
Baiting the trolls.
Joined the salute.
Yeah.
What's that?
Trying to bait the trolls.
No. It was more literally to say we're on your side.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you.
Because you can't raise daughters as I have, saying you can be whatever you want.
No, right. Absolutely, I agree.
Except for the trolls, no.
Yeah.
Actually, I think you've met Carolyn, who usually works at the
table
have. With me.
Right.
And I think you'll back me up and say that if it came to it, she would literally kick those guys' tushes all over the place.
Yeah.
So, as long as they're hiding behind the internet,
right,
they're He-Men.
Exactly.
So that's where we can be found. Sort of a big show.
Well,
also, if you find me on Facebook or Twitter, every show that goes up is linked on both of those.
Super. We will take a look at that. And thank you, Brian Augustyn, for being on the show this time.
Yes, thank you very much. This was a very enjoyable conversation.
My pleasure. For you guys, anything. It's great to have become friends over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate a chance to chat about this stuff with grown-ups.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot.
Hey, it's America's sweetheart, Brian Augustyn, comic legend and bon vivant, and you're listening to the Two Gay Geeks.
I really enjoyed that.
That was an amazing interview. And I'm so glad we finally got it.
We've been trying to get an interview with Brian for a year and a half or 2 years, something like that.
About 2 now.
We got one, and it was completely unusable. But this was a really great, and it came at the right time too with Gotham by Gaslight.
With Gotham by Gaslight, especially, yeah.
Yeah, so
it was wonderful.
Here's the birthdays, a few selected birthdays for August 21st through August 27th, 2017. August 21st, Kenny Rogers and Count Basie. August 22nd, Ray Bradbury and Claude Debussy, born in 1864. Debussy was, not Ray Bradbury. August 23rd.
You would think that the way he was in his later years. Yeah. Crazy Uncle Ray.
Yeah. August 23rd, Barbara Eden, best known as
Jeannie.
Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie. Also on August 23rd,
Jeannie Kelly.
Jeannie Kelly. Yeah, Gene Kelly. Silly. And River Phoenix. And Keith Moon. Who was Keith Moon?
Let me see. Any relation to Richard's son?
No.
I was really working on that.
Silly.
He was the original drummer for The Who.
Yeah. And also on August the 23rd, our favorite fairy godmother travel agent.
She's our fairy godmother.
Yes, Teresa Corey. Happy birthday, Teresa. And she's going to Alaska, as we're recording this episode, actually.
As of when we're recording this, but by the time it comes out, we're approaching it. She's already home.
Yeah, she's already home doing something else. August 24th, Marlee Matlin.
And we got to see her at Disney World for the Candlelight Processional, and she was magical.
Yeah, it was a magical performance. Also, Rupert Grint and Skip Jones. Skip is one of our friend of the show.
We met him through Slice of Sci-Fi.
Yeah, through Slice of Sci-Fi. August 25th, Mr. Sean Connery.
Pooja.
Yes. And Tim Burton and Raleigh Fingers.
Former pitcher of the Oakland A's.
Mr. Mustache himself.
Oh, yeah, he's the one who made the handlebar mustache uber fashionable.
I'm telling you. Also on August 25th, Leonard Bernstein and SF Edwards, or Sean from Edwards, who we might be able to see when we're in Seattle. You never know. August 26th, Macaulay Culkin and Albert Sabin, born in 1906. He was the polio vaccine. Anyway.
Yes?
Yes, whatever. August 27th, Paul Rubens.
Pee Wee Herman.
Anyway.
I know you are, but what am I?
Yeah. Also on August 27th, Mr. Vic Mignogna.
Star Trek Continues. Well,
Yeah.
Let me see, is it Star Trek Continues? Or
Yes.
I think it's Star Trek Continues, yes.
Yes. And that's it for the birthdays this time. Here it comes again.
Technorama, the podcast for geeks.
I'm having
because
a terrible feeling of
geeks
deja vu.
are better than cool. You
Deja
don't hear
vu all
someone
over
say,
again.
Yeah.
Get away from me,
you cool person.
Who's gonna have their 65-inch home theater system installed by the Cool Squad?
Not me, that's for sure.
How much cool cred do you have? Not enough to care about. Think you'll find any canned unicorn meat at thinkcool.com? It's just a part domain name. They don't even have roadkill in a paper cup. That's why you need to start listening to Technorama, because that's what geeks do. Go to chuckchat.com and listen to Technorama before you turn cool.
Oh, heaven forbid.
That's got to be one of the craziest bumpers ever. Just all the little vignettes in there.
I know, but it was so much
It's
fun.
so wonderful.
What's great is that even Chuck doesn't remember what he's saying.
Go give a listen to our friends Chuck and Craig over at Technorama, chuckchat.com. And now...
Yes.
There we go. No feedback this time.
Because that scratch wasn't good enough the first time.
There we go. I have the scratch on the iPad now, so
I can tell.
use it. Right? There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to hear from you, our listeners, with your feedback. Please check us out at TG Squared Studios on Facebook, our TG Geeks webcast, and tggeeks.com. You can also comment on our Skype line. Yeah. Our listener feedback line, which happens to be a Skype line, is 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357.
You don't need to hear their identification. They're the Two Gay Geeks. They can go about their business. Move along.
And we'll just scratch the second segment. Music. We won't even play it.
Might as well.
We'll just go right into the follow-up. Thank you to the individual that nominated us for the Parsec Awards, and check out our calendar on the website. If you have a birthday or an event or a con or a film festival or whatnot, send us a note. We'll be glad to put it on the calendar. Come see us and say hi. We're going to be at Horrible Imaginings Film Festival in San Diego on Saturday, September 9th, OperaCon by Arizona Opera, October 21st, and Phoenix Comic-Con Fan Fest in November 11th and 12th. As everybody knows, we're huge supporters of independent creators, and Brian is doing some work independently as well.
Work now?
It's not just filmmakers or comic book artists, but writers as well. And there's a lot of talent out there that doesn't get a lot of the fame and fortune. So if you hear about somebody doing a crowdfunding campaign, please consider supporting it. Support independent creators. Phoenix Comic-Con Fan Fest returns to Phoenix on November 11th and 12th. More info to come. They haven't released anything yet. And Phoenix Comic-Con is May 24th through 27th, 2018. As I mentioned earlier, OperaCon by Arizona Opera. It's prior to the Hercules versus the Vampires performance on the October 21st. More information to come. Stay tuned. Check out Arizona Opera at azopera.org.
Special shout out to Doctor Who Talking Who on Twitter. They published the Doctor Who Fancast Guide, which continues to republish our stories. You can read the Fancast Guide by going to Twitter and looking for @TalkingWho. And a special thanks to our good friend Arkle. He publishes the Arkle Times Post Dispatch News. And on Twitter, he is known as the Human Arkle. And you can find him by searching Arkle, just searching @Arkle. He also has on Tumblr the Incorrect Star Trek Voyager quotes. Check it out for a good laugh, for a good head scratch. But be, as I say many times, don't do it at work. You don't want your boss catching you sloughing out, playing around your computer. It's never a good thing.
And we want to give a shout out to The Lookie Show, the twins. They're great. At Lookie Show on Twitter, and more especially on YouTube. They are The Lookie Show. You should check them out. They do a rather unique version of movie reviews. So check out Lookie Show on YouTube.
Special shout out again to the Facebook group, The Gay Geek, for allowing us to post our episodes on their page. It's an awesome page with some awesome content because there's a lot of awesome people there, including the awesome moderator, Jeremiah Reeves, who gave us his awesome approval to post our awesome episodes there. Have I said awesome enough times?
Awesome. Possum. Check out our Amazon ads. We got widgets on the side of the page, and we have a search ad at the bottom of each article, and we try to keep the search ads relevant to the topic of the day, and you can check those out. It doesn't have cost anything. You can do that and tell Amazon that we're driving traffic to them. If you do choose to buy something, use one of our search ads. We get a little bit of a kickback. And last, please rate us and review us on iTunes and subscribe to our YouTube channel and all the other places that we can be found. Yeah. SoundCloud and Spreaker and Stitcher and every place else. So check it out. Thank you. Well, I'm not sure what we have coming up next time. It's going to be something. We'll see.
Let's see. Oh gosh. I have no idea by this point.
Yeah, so we'll see. We haven't figured it out ourselves.
No, that's way too far in advance.
All right. So okay, that should do it for this episode of TG Geeks Webcast. Be sure to check out the article for this episode. There's going to be a couple of links to Brian's work and some other things. And remember, you can comment on our Facebook page or tggeeks.com or leave us a voicemail at 469-TG-GEEKS. That is 469-844-3357. From TG Squared Studios, I'm Keith Lane. Thanks for listening. I bid you peace.
Cheers.